Hello, Falcons fans. J. Michael Moore here, going on location in the Atlanta Falcons team meeting room in Flowery Branch. You'll notice banner from the Super Bowl season in 1998 to one side, current logo in the middle. We're in the back of the team meeting room, a very empty team meeting room here, and I'm going to answer some of your fan questions about the offseason. Thanks very much for submitting your questions via Voices Heard, and ask that you continue to do that through the offseason, the scouting combine, and on through the year as we do select interviews with players and other Falcons personnel, including me. So we're going to jump right into some fan questions. Going to try to get in as many as I can here in the small YouTube time frame, and you'll be able to check these out also on atlantafalcons.com/askaquestion. First question comes from John P.17. He asks, since the Falcons don't have a second-round pick right now, they need to make a splash with their first-round pick. Do you have a short list of star-caliber players the Falcons should be eyeing in the draft, and who are they? It's a great question, John. First of all, let's go ahead and say the Falcons have the 19th or 20th selection in the first round. They have a coin flip with the Houston Texans at the scouting combine to determine that selection. Do not have a second-round pick because it was traded away for Tony Gonzalez before the 2009 draft. So I think it's still very early to go through and maybe highlight a few players, but if you're going to look at a side of the ball, I think this year, again, it's defense. That's an area where the Falcons are still young and thus looking to build a little bit more. So some names to throw out there right now. Again, just names that might fall in the middle of that first round on defense. You're going to have Derek Morgan from Georgia Tech. You're going to have Brandon Graham, a defensive end from Michigan. Joe Hayden and Carlos Dunlap, both Florida defenders that are juniors that have declared. And you're also going to have to wait and see what other juniors may declare for the draft before January 18th. Next question comes from Joe T080632. What do you think the Falcons will do in free agency? A great question. And I wish I was a mind reader and could be able to talk about that. But then again, I wouldn't be able to necessarily share it either. Don't want to give away any trade secrets. But the main thing you have to remember about free agency this year is that currently there is no renewed collective bargaining agreement. Now, what does that mean? It means there's going to be an uncapped year in 2010. Now, this means also that some players who were scheduled to be unrestricted free agents, meaning they could go with any team that they want, sign with any team they want, will be restricted free agents. Normally, after 4 years, you become an unrestricted free agent. That would move to 6 in an uncapped year. So the free agent pool would get drastically smaller. It would affect more than 200 players. So that's going to affect free agency. But if you want to go out there and find some players in the restricted free agency pool and you're willing to give up a draft pick compensation to the team that they currently play for, great. There'll be cornerbacks out there you can possibly find. But you got to remember the uncapped year, and that's going to affect what the Falcons do. Thomas Dimitroff himself said the team's going to be very fiscally responsible during this time to not blow the bank and be afraid of what might happen on the backside when there is a new collective bargaining agreement in 2011. Next question again comes from John P. Are the Falcons going to be more aggressive in the draft or free agency? How will the uncapped year affect free agency? Well, I already talked a little bit about how the uncapped year will affect free agency. I think the thing to remember when you're talking about the Falcons in free agency is that they're always going to go in with a plan. And it's going to be, if the person they like is in free agency, they'll devote it there and maybe go somewhere else in the draft. But they're always going to look at the draft first. If there's a spot in the draft or a position in the draft, a player in the draft, that will build this team for the future, they'll focus there and augment through free agency. So it all draws up to, what's that list of players look like? What does that list of position needs looks like? And where are you going to get the best value? Next question comes from Strauss. I would like to know the status of our injured players and how they are progressing. Harry Douglas, William Moore, Parade Jerry, etc. Well, I talked to Harry Douglas on Wednesday. You can find that video on AtlantaFalcons.com coming soon, or in my blog as well. Hoping to talk to Parade Jerry soon, but Coach Smith said that every player who ended the year on injured reserve will be ready for the next season. They've had their surgeries. They're ready to go. They're in rehab. In the case of Jerry and Douglas, and even more to an extent, they went on injured reserve earlier in the year, so they've had more time to recover. So again, everyone should be ready for off-season conditioning. Ratio 377 asked, do you think we need a cornerback? If so, do you think that a rookie cornerback like Joe Hayden or a veteran would be better? Well, again, Joe Hayden would be a much younger rookie because he's a junior coming out early. thing you got to remember about veteran cornerbacks is it's not necessarily an easy position to come in and play. The Falcons did add Brian Williams and Ty Hill, early in 2009, and Ty Hill took a while to play. Williams came in mostly because he knew the defense from his time in Jacksonville with Coach Smith and Brian Van Gorder and Alan Reynolds. So it's a very unique situation, a unique position. Not necessarily you can come in and contribute right away. There's some things you're going to have to learn. I do think the Falcons always in that position would rather go young. And look at what happened this year with Christopher Owens, a rookie third-round pick, came in, played well down the stretch, started 6 games. That's a very, very good sign that the team's going in the right direction from building at that position. But again, don't rule out adding if there's a need, just like the team did late into training camp this year with Williams and Hill. Moving right along, Matt, 1979, asks, is there any possible way to pick up a shutdown corner in free agency? Well, Dante Robinson is going to be out there for the Houston Texans, a player I got to know when he was a rookie when I worked in Houston in 2004. Great player. Kind of a dark horse candidate for a Pro Bowl as a rookie. So that's really a big feather in his cap. But again, that's free agency, that's open market, that's money. That's a lot of things that go into your favor or your disadvantage. So something to keep in mind when you're going there. Bad Boy 69-214 asks, Tony G is a great player, and it would be nice to have him help teach a quality rookie tight end. And with Gonzalez, a young player, would not have to play right away. Do you see the Falcons drafting one? Drafting a tight end, if they do, probably not early, because look, you don't have a second-round pick right now. You got to really make a splash with that first round, as an earlier reader mentioned. Justin Peele, you got to remember with the Falcons, has just finished his second year, had 2 touchdowns this year, played well in that number 2 role, and let's just assume worst case scenario, Tony Gonzalez does perhaps get injured. You have to go some time without him. Well, the Falcons moved the ball effectively without him in 2008, didn't really throw the tight end. So they have some options there that they can do. You also have to remember the team has drafted a tight end, Keith Zinger, in the 2008 draft, stuck with the team this year, developed on a fast track, developing well. The team really likes him. So there are options at that position already on the roster. And again, I haven't looked too deeply into the tight end pool, mostly because there is Tony Gonzalez already here. Sifu Wong 700 asks, why didn't the Falcons go with no huddle more to spark the offense? It seemed like every time Ryan ran it, we moved the ball with great effect. Yet it didn't seem like Malarkey installed it in the game plan every week. Why? That's a great question. And you go back into the transcripts and you look at what Coach Smith and Mike Malarkey say about the no huddle. It's very much a need or time-sensitive piece of this offense. So it's not something you're going to roll out all the time because it'll lose its effectiveness. If you get too much of it on the film, the defense is going to be able to game plan. And it also handcuffs you because when you go no huddle, you're not the sugar huddle and the true no huddle, you're not going to be able to move in as much personnel on yourself, on your side of the ball. So it does handcuff you. That said, it's very encouraging for Falcons fans that Matt Ryan does it so well. It's going to pay dividends in 2-minute situations over his career. Going to get one more in. Bad Boy 69-214 again asked, think our issues covering people is from a lack of pressure on the quarterback. What chances we could pick up a defensive end to play opposite John Abraham in free agency, whose sack total took a hit from all the double teams? Bingo. I always talk about how this defense is looking to build from the front back. Pressure makes an average cornerback look very good. Makes an athletic cornerback like Brent Grimes look even better. So let's think about this. Free agency isn't always the answer. I think a lot of people say these questions like, let's go get a free agent. Not necessarily, because again, you have to spend a lot of money to do that versus a draft pick. So let's look at the draft class of the Falcons. 2 defensive ends in 2 years under Dimitroff. Lawrence Sidbury progressed a lot quicker than people thought he would. Got a sack this year and a fumble return for a touchdown. Corey Bierman, I think he certainly showed that he can do the job. 5 sacks. And then you also look at the position in the draft. There's some guys out there who are going to be available first round, even later, who can come into the rotation. And again, don't think about so much about how the team ended the season. Think about what they'll have next year. Parade Jerry coming back, get an interior pass rush. Jonathan Babineau, defensive tackle, led the team in sacks with an interior pass rush. It's going to look different in 2010, whether the Falcons make a move or not. Thanks so much for your questions. We'll be back again later in the offseason to take more.